We'll call the Planning and Zoning meeting of June 17th to order. Let the record show we are missing one commissioner, Mr. Bush. First item on the order of business would be the order of business itself. Mr. Hadley, will there be any changes to the order of business?
No, Mr. Chairman, no changes this time. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, I'd look for approval of the order of business.
I'll make that motion to approve it.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Second item on the order of business is the minutes of the previous session, May 14th.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Mr. Bullinger, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sikarsky. Any further discussion regarding the minutes of the last session? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we will move on to our first action item of the day. It is FLP-005-2020 to consider a request for final plat of West Villard 3rd Edition, consisting of one 5-acre lot located off 114th Avenue Southwest within the city of Dickinson, ETZ, a parcel of land located in Government Lot 6, Section 6, Township 139 North, Range 96 West of the 5th Principal Meridian of Stark County, North Dakota. Mr. Hadley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commission. And this particular item is another ETZ family land split into 5 acres, so a family member can build a home out there. No comments from the public. There was one comment that called in and just wanted to know that they were going to develop a number of homes out there from adjoining property owner, and they were assured that wasn't the intent here, and that's not what we were looking at. The only issue, if you read through the review, is that there's a dedication for 114th for additional right-of-way. And it's something that the city condoned in the 2013 comp plan, and it's in our long-range plan that becomes a arterial. And basically, Loretta's here to discuss that. I think the applicant has a representative here. We really haven't heard if they're agreeable, or if we're moving forward with the dedication, or if we need to have some dialogue on it. So I think that's where probably we need to start.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hadley. Loretta, engineering comments?
Yeah, along this section line road, which is 114th, in our comp plan, we've designated that as a minor arterial. And because we've requested the same dedication of right-of-way, which would be a 50-foot on the east side of that line, plus an additional 10-foot utility easement to another plat to the north, and that has been completed and recorded, and they included that right-of-way. We feel that to move ahead with what our comp plan states, we would request the same shown on this plat instead of the standard easement for a section line road.
Which would be 33 feet?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Loretta. If the applicant is here, or representative, any comments?
Thank you. Andrew Schrank with Highlands Engineering, representing the applicant. As Mr. Hadley had said, this is a pretty straightforward application with the exception of this road issue. The intention is simply to sell this lot to their daughter so they can build a residence out there. With the road issue, you know that this road does lead to interstate essentially. It will be dead end a mile to the north. It never will lead through there. The owner would prefer to keep this a smaller residential road, not a large minor arterial. The development to the north, you know, that was platted some years ago, has not come to fruition. Likely that may never come to fruition. I guess with me today here is also Joe Yarthrod to speak his case for this road as well, but their preference is still to leave this as just the section line access. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Commissioners?
If that does come to fruition, that subdivision that's plotted up there, is that going to cause some issues with the road, or?
Going forward, if we would move ahead as a minor arterial, they would be required to, or we would ask them to donate that right of way. At that point, the city would probably have to purchase the right of way. And then the lot would no longer be conforming because it would be less than 5 acres. Just to Mr. Schrank's point about being a dead end, when this was looked at with the comp plan, it was also looked at to have another overpass to the interstate. So it would connect to the north side. We all know that things come and go and we might not see anything, but things can turn around and all of a sudden we're wanting to develop. So in the best interest of the city, we feel we should include this right away as part of this parcel so that going down the road, we wouldn't have to look at purchasing it back from the property owner.
Mr. Chairman, just to add in, the West Dickinson plan, obviously there was a large push that was the direction that the city of Dickinson wanted to grow, and that's why a lot of these items were included in the future land use plan.
Mr. Arthod, is this negotiable?
I guess my issue is, you know, I did fight that back when they were going to do that development back, I think it was in 13, was it 13? And I thought the plans were ridiculous. And I've been in this area all my life. I've been in the oil field for 40 years. And what I saw them doing, I knew was not going to be sustainable for the city of Dickinson. And I did come in and talk to the commissioners and engineering at that point. And not that I'm some kind of genius or anything, but it did come true, you know. And I think if I would have allowed that road to expand, things would have happened out there. Well, oil prices dropped, they went bankrupt, and what would we have had out there? You know, he was going to build this hotel, he's going to build these box stores, he's going to build 500 housing lots out there. And to tell you the truth, it scares me. You know, I have a half section of land out there. I have no intention of developing it. Maybe my kids will someday in their lifetime, but I wanted to keep it pristine the way it was. And I think if I would have allowed that easement at that time, it would have been a disaster. And I understand what you're saying on the road, totally. But I just feel like it's my only way of keeping things natural out there. I'm just scared because at that time, I know all the commissioners were different. Everybody in here was not there at that time. But they were so gung-ho of doing this development when we had 10 other developments in town going on at the same time. And I pleaded with all the commissioners at that time to let's step back and take a look. And it just went forward. And that's my only fear now is if I do give this easement and another one of these developments come in and we go forward with it again and it turns into another $20 oil event and it gets deserted, then I have this on my hands and my north side of my border, you know, and I just think it would have ruined my property from what they had planned at that time. So I'm not against, you know, allowing this easement. I'm just really leery of what's going to happen out there. That's, you know, and I talked to Al Heiser and I talked to some other people, and Al told me, Jody, he goes, that's probably never going to happen in our lifetime. And I said, yeah, you're probably right, Al, but I'm just a little gun shy. So that's my point of view. So, I mean, if you guys turn me down today, I don't know. Maybe I won't do it. I don't know. I'll have to talk to my wife and my daughter. So, but I just wanted you to know my feelings on. It's not that I don't want the city to grow, and it's not that I don't want that road to widen out. It's just I'm leery of what the future holds. So, thank you.
So just a minute,
Miss-
Jody. Excuse
Go
me.
ahead, Shirley, yeah.
Would you be building just a private road going into this 5 acres then?
Yes.
You would not be going on the section line?
Well, we'd have to use the section line
Okay.
road to get into the, because if you can vision it going north, the section line road goes up, and my land's right here, it'd be like right in that corner.
And you're next to that Roars that was supposed to be a development area?
No,
It
Nope.
wasn't Roars.
it was the group out of South Korea or whatever.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, remember that mess?
I can't remember who owns that land back there.
Well, in the land straight north of me, I think Walton still owned that, because at that time, the half section, they bought, I think, the quarter to the east, and then the contingency to have the quarter to the west, and I don't think they ever did purchase the quarter to the west. So I think the Walton family still owns that.
Yeah. I
No,
don't
the
think it
other-
ever transferred, as far as I know, but.
The other property went into like a bankruptcy and did a sheriff's sale, and where it went from there, I don't know. I know Aspen Realty, I think, had it for a while, and they were trying to sell it, but I did pursue it, but I don't know. You can't get anybody to give you a decision on it, but
Surely, I think if you look at it, it's across from, your property's across from Ryan Gillett, who lives to the west of you, and Valesky's.
Valesky's, yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
That building back there, so he's basically to the east of them.
Straight east of Rogers. shop.
Roger Valesky's building. It's it's not a straight up section line, it's an improved road.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
Any further questions for Mr. Arthon? Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I guess our options right now, our options today would be to request an easement, and if we don't request an easement, then we'd have to purchase it back if it were ever to be developed. Is that
Well,
correct?
That's a thought process from engineering. When things boomed before, we had a lot of plats where we had the section line easement, and then when we did want to expand, it cost us a lot of dollars just to buy that right away. So it's not that we foresee this developing anytime soon.
Mhm.
Nobody's looking at that right now. It's just to stay consistent with our plan, request this right away, so that if we ever do develop in the future, we would already have that in place, and it wouldn't be something we would need to purchase from the property owner.
If we wouldn't get it now, from what I understand, we'd either have to use eminent domain or some other,
Correct.
Form.
We would have to negotiate a price
if we
or
couldn't get
use
there.
eminent domain.
What's been, I mean, on these small plats, what have we been, I mean, is this something we've required? Have we had any times that we've approved it without getting the right of way?
We've had a lot of smaller plats like this where it's one lot, rural, somebody splitting off from the family so that, a son or daughter could build a home, and we're requesting that same right of way, whatever the comp plan meets. If it's just a standard road section, that right of way we're requesting is probably less. But it matches whatever road we have proposed in the future with our comp plan.
Thank you, Loretta.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could, if it's an easement, obviously the owner would still have ownership of that, and it would count as the 5 acre piece. And it wouldn't become an issue if development happened out there. That zoning district may change, and then that could be brought into compliance by zoning at some point in time. So that would be an option as well. And Mr. Chairman, we do need to have a public hearing.
Okay. Commissioners, before we open a public hearing, any more thoughts or questions for the applicant? Mr. Hadley?
Mr. Chairman, so just so
Yes.
I'm clear, whatever we decide today wouldn't affect the plans, the future plans, it would just be how we go about obtaining the rights?
Correct. This could move forward either way. If you leave the easement as proposed on the current plat, or if you choose to have them move forward with dedicating the right-of-way, If they would then move forward with this plat with the right-of-way, it just changes in the future, whenever that would develop, how we go about. Either we already have the right-of-way, or we'd have to work through a process to purchase or take.
And Mr. Arthod's comment was that if we do this with the right-of-way, then you're not interested in. Sorry.
I'm just gun shy. That's the only thing. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I don't want to get in the way of development. I don't ever see it booming again, really, to tell you the truth. So I think I'll be all right with the easement. I think I'll be all right with that.
And just to respond to that, it's not that we foresee it booming in the
Right.
future either. It's just from our past experience, we just are trying to do what's best for the city and already have that property available. If sometime in the future, which may be long past any of us being here, we would already have that taken care of. That road would expand.
So we would just add that on here, on the motion, that,
Yes, that we would follow the suggestion from the engineering department requesting the additional 50-foot of right-of-way and a 10-foot utility easement.
So in that right away, then that would only be if something would happen as far as the development in that area.
Correct.
So there would, I mean, as far as utilities and that kind of stuff, just for future growth, right?
Yeah, I can't foresee any reason why
Right.
we would use that unless that would all of a sudden start developing out there,
Okay.
and we would come forward with road plans and those things you would be able to speak to.
Okay.
We would have public meetings, and you would be able to give input at
I
that
mean,
time.
That road in our comp plan is a minor arterial that we have planned to go over the interstate at some point, but
Correct.
it might not be in our lifetime.
Right,
so-
yeah.
But,
I don't see that happening,
but, I mean, to build another overpass, there would have to be huge development and, you know, and traffic and
yeah. Yeah.
so.
I think there's actually a pass plan further to the east, over by the Menards.
Well, I think that's
on-
this
On
one.
that artillery road.
I think this is that's this one, I think.
Or was it this
Yeah,
one?
Yeah.
yeah. This was the one,
Yeah.
when they had that development
Right.
plotted in 2013, you know, it was gonna be,
I knew there was one coming off the,
Yeah.
I thought there was one coming off the county road going by the county shop too.
right.
and right now, this is just the ETZ zone anyway, right?
Right, it's in our ETZ, so, yeah, that's another step. I mean, before this would all happen, it would have to be annexed too. You know, at least some of it would have to be annexed, but, I mean, that's what I'm saying, it's a long ways down the road, so.
Well, Steve's just sitting there with a grin on his face. Let's hear from you. Okay. Well, I'd like to make that motion.
We gotta have
Public hearing.
Oh, we gotta
Never
have a public
mind.
hearing, okay. All right, well, if there's no more commissioner questions, we will open the public hearing regarding this final plat. If anybody in the public has any comments or concerns, please come to the mic and state your concerns. Anyone in the public have any concerns regarding this final plat? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing, and commissioners, I will look for your wishes.
Would like to make that motion, but I'm going to need some help on this one. I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of West Ballard Third Subdivision Final Plot as depicted in Attachment A-Plot and meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code. And then where do I add that 50 feet in there with the right-of-way? 50 feet and the 10-foot easement?
Correct.
In the future, if needed, or right-of-way?
Yeah, it would be,
Got it,
I
Rita?
think you want to say include on the
including the 50-foot right-of-way and
Okay.
the
easement,
10-foot easement, yeah.
sorry, easement, right?
And
Right,
also
right.
being in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare.
So we understand that motion? Approve it, the 50-foot easement, the right-of-way. Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Karski. Any further discussion, commissioners?
And then it's up to the Arthurs if they want to move forward on that after we've done this.
I just have one clarification, if that's okay, Mr. Commissioner.
Yeah.
Are we requesting 50-foot easement or 50-foot right-of-way? The difference would be the right-of-way would be owned and public, would not be part of Mr. Arthod's lot anymore, so we'd have to actually shift this east 50 feet to meet the 5-acre minimum. If it's an easement, we would simply just add that easement. It would still be owned by Mr. Arthod. So I just want to make sure that's clear and that we know what our direction is there.
Engineering intent is for a 50-foot right-of-way.
Okay. And that's okay, Mr. Arthod? The right-of-way is okay?
So that right away, if we do this right away, then, obviously we're farming that area there. So do we not farm that anymore?
Good question. Honestly, at this point, with what's going on out there, I don't think anybody would notice if you continue.
The right-of-way, I mean, the right-of-way is still, it's public, but it's basically yours to maintain anyway, so if you're farming it, I don't think we're gonna complain, so.
You're taking care of it.
Yeah.
We do have a number of right-of-ways in the city that are being farmed.
Okay, so just so we're clear then, it's a motion to approve with a 50-foot right-of-way and a 10-foot utility easement. Is that correct?
Correct. I think they can move forward with the revised plat based on these items, and we'll be able to just keep moving forward. They would not need to come back to P&Z.
I agree. Okay. All right. Anything else, commissioners, before we call a vote? All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we will move on to item 2 on our agenda for the day. SUP-002-2020, to consider a request for a special use permit for installation of telecommunications antenna and equipment on the existing structure located at 41 Villard Street East, City of Dickinson, Stark County, North Dakota. This was an item we tabled from the previous meeting. Mr. Hadley, would you give us an update?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item, as you said, was tabled from the last meeting. The applicant had been working with the owner and just last week sent an email basically requesting to table it once again. And so I've had some dialogues with the owner and also the applicant to let them know that the direction from staff from the last meeting through the commission, it didn't seem like they were going to table this item once again. So the recommendation or the memorandum that I wrote you that outlines it basically states that my recommendation would be to deny it and then come back in with a complete packet. And I would probably preface that by saying by our next deadline for our next public hearing agenda review. And otherwise, then we could start the enforcement process as far as just following up with it. The chairman and I had a discussion before the meeting, and that this has been going on. It's been discussed for a long time. A lot of projects are discussed for a long time before they go. A number of things happened with this one, I believe, in that they started work in the fall, late fall. Were allowed to complete it. And then we obviously then asked them to go through the process, and it took them through the holidays and through the beginning of the year to get an application in to us to basically review and go forward. it's rather important, I think, that, none of us, we'd all like to see that building occupied and revitalized at some point in time and utilized and not just used as a cell tower. And I think that was part of the discussion that we had in previous months. I think that we do need to get this finalized. That we do have some encroachment issues that, with those antennas in the Villard right-of-way. And, I don't know, I'll let Loretta maybe address that if that's going to be an issue. They are quite a ways above the right-of-way, but they are extending into the right-of-way. And as you know, we're doing a Villard project that we've identified all of the encroachments into that right-of-way and are removing them. So,
Do I read this correct? The DOT left that in our hands?
The DOT left that in our hands, but because the project has federal funds, we have to certify to the feds that the encroachments have been removed. Existing encroachments that meet certain requirements can be permitted by the city, and we've gone through this process. However, the antenna were not involved in that, so they would be considered a new encroachment. And that could affect federal funding for us to have encroachments in that right of way, especially during the middle of a project. So that would be our concern. We realize that they're 72 feet in the air. They probably are not impacting anything from our standpoint as the city, but it is something that when we apply for federal funding, that they require that certification. And since we've already gone through the process but have not yet completed the project, it raises concerns with the engineering department.
I wish Miss Winkle was here, so we... Let's just hold for a minute then, because I mean, what requirements is the hang-up here? What's the hang-up with them getting us what we need?
they're trying to meet the conditions of approval, and which included buttoning up the building, which be fixing the broken windows, broken doors, whatnot, securing it, and then improving the facade, and then just enclosing the cabling in the back. And I think they don't have a problem with that. What they're trying to do is figure out how and who's gonna pay for buttoning up the windows and the doors and the facade improvement on the ground level.
Okay.
But I believe the
And-
cabling and then the cleanup of the site has been resolved
And
with the owner.
from what Loretta's saying, or engineering is saying, is that we can't really approve this because they're encroaching in the federal right of way.
Yeah, it's kind of a hairy area. I think we could maybe do something with it if the project was completed. But, but right now, because we're in the middle of something with federal funding, it could impact it. As a new encroachment. I just want to clarify.
So when do we have to certify that to the DOT have we done that already, that there was nothing encroaching?
There was nothing encroaching there at the time that we went through the process, and noted all the encroachments along that corridor. There were letters given about the encroachments. Some of them, just because of what they are, the age of the building or how long they've been there, were allowed and permitted to remain. And we were able to submit that to the Federal Highway Administration, along with our certification that the remainder of the corridor was encroachment-free.
Does AT&T understand that they're encroaching?
I believe so.
They do now.
Do they know,
I did share that with them.
and do they know what that possibly means? They'll have to move all that off there, or?
I would hope so from my email, because what I've explained to you today is what I explained and shared with them in the email that I responded to them with, that this is why engineering has an issue with the encroachment. Even though for most of us, or layperson may not think that it's a problem, 72 feet in the air, it only sticks out 1.5 feet into that right-of-way line. It still is considered an encroachment by Federal Highway Administration standards.
Mr. Hadley, sorry, Jason.
Go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but this has definitely been going on for a long time. And after reading through the emails and things like that, it seems like their communication hasn't been real good. They had the communication between AT&T or whatever and the owner of the property, and we can't get a hold of them. Well, I don't know if that.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. And after our first meeting, I believe, I reached out to the building owner and AT&T and asked them to resolve and work on this together. It really shouldn't be the city putting this together for them, but it wasn't moving forward. So I did try to facilitate moving those people forward. The building owner did appreciate that, but I think they're just at odds as to who is actually going to pay for some of those improvements. I think he has a lease agreement with them that states that they're responsible, and he's kind of standing by that, and I think they want to debate that. And I don't know that that's probably not, I'll defer to Ms. Winko, but I don't think that's a city, I don't think we want to be too far in the middle of that discussion.
Well, this has been going on for 9 months, and 40 pages later, we're still dealing with the same issues. I don't understand. I thought I made a motion last time that they had till this meeting, and that was it.
That's basically what we said in our... Ms. Winkle, what's our enforcement options here?
Commissioners, Mr. Hadley and I had an opportunity to visit about this. I believe in your packet there is a memorandum of basically a summary of your options here today. One of them obviously is to, of course, give an extension if you choose to do so. I think based on the comments made last meeting, that might be a hard sell here today. Additionally, you have the option for abatement, which would be basically essentially asking them to rescind and bring it back into compliance or get rid of it, essentially. Or we have very encompassing, overarching policy within the city code that the city can take whatever remedy necessary in order to bring it back into compliance. So I believe, I don't know if Mr. Hadley has that memorandum, but there are some flexible options for the city if you choose to do so. I think at this juncture, I would agree with Mr. Hadley that it is not the city's prerogative to get in between the builder and the owner and what they're planning on doing. I think it all comes down to how much deference you want to give at this point, considering the amount of deference you've already given. At this juncture, I think you have to be aware and be mindful that federal funding is at issue. So given those circumstances, given the circumstances surrounding the request, the timeline that Ms. Dukart has indicated, I think the city would be well within its right to deny the application and make them come back, but also to require them to remove the structure to bring it back into compliance with federal regulations so that the city isn't in jeopardy of losing any funding.
So then that'll bring up my next question. Would they be able to put it back the way it was? Or is that SUP been expired now too?
Actually, I don't know that they had an SUP for what collapsed and fell over when the billboard fell over a number of years ago. There was some repairs and things done then. I don't know that we have an SUP.
I mean, prior to this, all the antennas were on some standards up on top of the building. I mean, they
Right.
weren't hanging on the building, so.
Right, so, yeah, they wouldn't be able to go and do that without a SUP. That's the point.
And then if we require them to bring it back into compliance and they don't, then that's when the enforcement we would come back with enforcement.
Correct. I think that the decision that has to be made here today is what direction you're going to go. If you're going to make the decision that you want it removed, At that juncture, I think you need to set a time frame and specific requirements that would have to be met in order for that to be done. In the event that that's not done, then at that juncture, we would have to proceed with either giving them legal notice that the structure is an encroachment and that the city is going to move to abate it, which would potentially require legal filings and potentially filing with the district court. But I think first and foremost, you make a decision on whether you want to grant the extension. If not, a timeline in which those structures would need to be removed. If they're not removed within that timeline, then they would be put on notice that the city would seek additional legal remedies against them for potentially fines and fees, and of course, the cost of removing the structure if the city has to do it itself.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Winkle. Questions, commissioners?
Could it be stated that they have a deadline now to either remove it or come in compliance?
Yeah, that's basically what she's saying, yeah.
Right. Do we have to make a motion for that, or?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I guess it will be the commission's decision on whether you even want them to have the opportunity to get into compliance, or you take the decision that, and make the decision that enough is enough at this point and the structure is going to be removed. That will be the decision that you will have to make. If you want to give them an opportunity to get into compliance or have the structure removed, I would recommend that you set a very specific and hard deadline so we're not back here again having to rehash these issues. So they're put on notice, this is the deadline.
Can we ask our city inspectors how they feel about this?
Sure.
Come up to them, Mike.
Mr. Dukart, you're put on the spot.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, Mr. Schwint is not in the office this week, but if I could speak for him, I would say that he would want it into compliance and set a date for it, but as I said, he's not here. Personal opinion, yes, I would say that they should put it into compliance or remove the building.
Thank you.
Well,
I mean,
Mr. Chairman, as far as the timeline, is 30 days reasonable to accomplish?
I would, as Ms. Winkle mentioned, I would maybe suggest that they meet our deadline requirements for our regular September Planning Commission meeting, because that would be the first Friday in August. That would be my suggestion.
I mean,
So
the
that-
way they have it is not going to work, so they're gonna have to redesign it.
At least put them back on top, right?
They're gonna have to come up with some different design, because it's not gonna work on the
Not
front.
the building, it's not a cell tower.
Yeah, right. So that could take a little bit of time, but, I mean, if you give them till the first Friday in August, what is that? That's,
September? You said September, right?
For our September meeting, the deadline
September.
is
So
the
it'd be August.
first Friday in August, so that would be the.
so it'd be August 7th, that would give them
7 weeks.
almost 7 weeks. So,
That's enough time. You know, if we don't put some teeth into this, it's never going to happen. 9 months later?
Would that be the deadline to have it removed or have them reapply?
I would think that they would meet your intent if they had applied at that time. And then once they're in the application process, then, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Winkle, but I think that once they're in the application process, then enforcement would cease until another decision is made.
Mr. Chairman, would that fall outside the compliance deadline or timeframe for the federal funds? Would we be pushing any,
It's already out of compliance.
okay, so we're beyond that. So
Yep. As it is now, it's already out of compliance. Because we went through the process of identifying all these and already certified that it was clear, this came in after that fact, and so it would be considered out of compliance as it stands today.
can you give us an example of something that we would have certified that's in the right of way? Like a canopy or something maybe, or?
Concrete stairs into an entrance to a business,
Sure.
something that's really difficult to accommodate, because anything that you would have to redesign to get them into that building, there's still gonna be an encroachment. So that would be the type of thing that we.
So something like that, you can't really remove it because you need it, but this doesn't have to be there. So
Correct.
they're gonna have a hard time with this being in the right of way.
Exactly.
Okay, commissioners, what's your wishes?
I actually think we've been pretty generous on this one, since it was done originally without approval. I would be willing to make a motion to deny the SUP on this one and give them a deadline of 90 days or the August meeting that we have,
August 7th?
August 7th, to get into compliance or have the equipment removed.
Or file, or submit a new application.
I kind of worry about the submitting the new application. Does that just give them reason to delay it out another 90 days or something if they just
True.
submit another application without being in?
Yeah, then we could go to just July 31st then or something if you wanted, if it's not the application.
Well, and the reason I kind of suggested 90 days was that would probably give them enough time, if they don't have it removed, to get the application in and get it approved by then. It would have to be approved within 90 days.
I'm okay with that. If everybody else is.
I think, Mr. Chairman, if I could interject just a little bit, just realize that the approval process does take the August 7th date. You'd be on September's meeting. It would be approved on the first city commission meeting in October. So that's why I probably would rather go with our deadlines. If they make an application for our September meeting, that puts them in that timeline to be approved by October 2nd or whatever that date is, the city commission meeting is. I would say, and Ms. Winko, please jump in, but I think that's a more known, steadfast part of our schedule. And they're very aware of it because they've been trying to work through it. So rather than just an arbitrary 90 days, I think that might be, it might cut them off, honestly, before we get it to a city commission meeting. And I really don't want to ask to have a special city commission meeting so we can approve this as well.
So, you want to restate your motion?
Well, I wanted to hear from our attorney.
Commissioner Dukart, I think in response to that, it's up to you what you decide to do. My concern would be that, my understanding is the structure was put up without authority, without approval. It is out of compliance, and we have an issue with potential federal funding being at issue. So I'm not an engineer. I don't know what it takes to bring that into compliance or remove it. But I think, and I would advise you, the sooner the better on this, simply because you have given so much deference to the applicant, and it wouldn't be a situation where it would be that difficult, but for the federal compliance requirements. I just don't want to see the city in a situation where the backs are against the wall because we may have a negative outcome because of the lack of compliance. So ultimately, it's your decision on time frame, but I would recommend a shorter compliance time frame simply because they need to get it taken care of, they need to get it back in compliance, or they need to remove it as soon as possible.
So 30 days would be reasonable then?
Considering the circumstances in this case, I would say 30 days is plenty reasonable.
Otherwise, we'll be going back into winter months again. If they keep dragging this out. I think our city staff has more important things to do than spend all their time on this particular antenna or whatever. So do it. Take the motion.
I guess I'll make the motion, but the 30 days or the September meeting, I'm kind of agreeing, because they wouldn't have time to get on the next, in 30 days to get on the next agenda, would they?
I mean, my deadlines, I do have some built-in time when I can work with people as long as I can get a legal in, but, you know, they're going to have to be very motivated to do that.
Absolutely. I will make the motion to deny the special use permit, giving them 30 days to either remove the equipment or get into compliance with a new application.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. Commissioners, any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, that ends our action items for this morning's meeting. We'll move into item 4 is our work session, non-action items, and we've got just a small one here, section 39.05.051 Downtown Overlay District. I think that's Mr. Josephson that's going to handle that.
It is, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
You get 3 minutes.
Okay.
Teasing.
Good morning, Commissioners. Steve Josephson. What you have before you is a proposed amendment to the Downtown Overlay District. The city approved this back in 2017, and it was approved to allow for their existing single-family residents in commercial zoning districts in the downtown area, that they would be conforming so people could continue to live with them if it burned down or were damaged or, would be sold. That was the primary focus of it. It also allows for people to convert those into commercial uses. At the time that it was adopted in 2017, there was about a block and a half area that was left out because at the time there was discussion that might be the site of a civic center. Since that time, I know Mr. Hadley and I have counseled people about buying single-family residences in that area and asked, well, we would be able to build back. And as long as that's outside of that, they're not considered legally conforming. So this would just add that block and a half area. It's into the overlay district. That's the only change it would make, is it would just expand the map to include that block and a half area where there are some what appear to be viable single-family structures. And I'm just here to get some guidance if you want to proceed with this.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Josephson on this? Seems like it's just a cleanup thing, basically.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we omitted it, as Stephen said, in 2017 because there was discussion of that civic center going there. I do get a number of calls for homes that are for sale in that area that they basically can't get money.
Sure.
To sell that,
Okay, yeah, I think if there's no concerns, I think we move forward and get it to the city commission for update, so.
Okay, thank you. And we can schedule that for whenever have public hearing for the next Planning and Zoning Commission.
Sure, yeah, that's right, we'll have to have planning, public hearing, I forgot, so.
Okay. All right, thank you. We'll
All right.
proceed.
Thanks, Mr. Josephson. Okay. Commissioners, well, we're on to item 5, items not on the agenda. If there's anybody that'd like to come up and discuss anything that wasn't on the agenda, this is the time to do it. I guess I skipped one, commissioners. This would be a time for you guys to come up too, if you want to talk about anything. Seeing and hearing none, I will move on to item 7 and look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Got a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.